Here's a look at my amber glow dawn redwood. It's getting pretty large, and you can see it has the light green to pale yellow, almost chartreuse colored foliage on the sun facing surfaces, and it's more normal green underneath. Here's a close-up of that foliage. You can see pale yellowish green here on the outside, and then if you check further under the tree, more of a normal green like standard dawn redwood. But it's been growing very well in this spot. This is a location that gets a lot of rain and every now and then standing water, which is ideal for a dawn redwood. They love really moist locations. Not always saturated, but periodically saturated. Let's take a look at my standard dawn redwood. Okay, right here center screen is the standard straight species dawn redwood. Metasequoia glyptostroboides is the Latin name. And then on the left side we have a standard bald cypress, Taxodium disticum, and then on the right is our native eastern red cedar, Juniperus virginiana. Here's a close look at that dawn redwood foliage, and just as a reminder or new information if you don't know, the dawn redwood is a conifer, but it's a deciduous conifer, meaning it loses its needles in the wintertime, and this whole frond right here will turn kind of a rust red orange color and fall off, leaving behind just the twigs, which will resprout new growth in the spring. The other interesting thing about the dawn redwood is the texture of the bark and the branches. Let's see if we can zoom in on one here. They have kind of this peeling outer skin and a little bit fuzzy skin underneath there, you can see on the branches. Here's a closer look at the peeling bark of the dawn redwood. You can see this fuzzy structure underneath and the outside flaky layers of the bark. As the bark matures, the fuzz goes away and you're left with relatively smooth branches on the dawn redwood. And this one has been in the ground for maybe about 4 years, and it's starting to get a decent sized trunk. I would say that's about 4 or 5 inches in diameter at the lowest point there. So it's got a pretty good branching structure so far. And dawn redwood is one of the fastest growing deciduous conifers that you can plant. And it grows well here in Middle Tennessee, even though it gets fairly cold. This standard dawn redwood, which is growing very well, is not necessarily in a very wet site. So you can grow them in normal draining sites or wetter than normal sites. And another tree that is very similar is this one, the bald cypress. Whereas dawn redwood is native to central China, this is native to right here in Tennessee and all over the southeast. And it's also a deciduous conifer, meaning it loses these leaves, and it also tolerates wetter than normal sites. Huh, that's interesting. Looks like a little bagworm there. Yeah, that's a tiny bagworm I was able to pull off, so watch out for bagworms on your conifers. The bald cypress is also very cold tolerant and heat tolerant, and you see them planted everywhere around here in Tennessee, so it's another great option for moist sites. And here's one more deciduous conifer that you can grow that also tolerates moist sites, and this is the pond cypress, Taxodium ascendens. Now there is a little bit of a debate here about whether or not it's actually a distinct species from the regular bald cypress, but the foliage is definitely a little bit different, and you can see it's not as neatly arranged in fern-like sprays. Let's go back to the regular for a second. Okay, there's bald cypress. You can see the foliage almost looks like fronds of a fern. And now back to pond cypress, where the foliage is a little bit more sparse and open and more wild, really, for lack of a better term. It's just not as neat looking as the regular bald cypress, but as it gets older, I think the needles stay a lot closer to the frond, so you get this very narrow foliage, and most of it ends up pointing upward. Kind of like you see on this branch here, where the frond is pointing directly upward. It'll tend towards that for all of the foliage as it gets older and more mature foliage. I think this one has still a little bit of the juvenile foliage because it's a fairly small specimen. There are only a couple other deciduous conifers that I would attempt here in Middle Tennessee, and this is one of them. This is the Japanese larch, Larix camphori, and even this is pretty risky because I've read online they can be attacked by fungus. But this one is still alive, and this is the Diane cultivar, so it's more narrow and columnar, as you can see. I did have a regular straight species Japanese larch, and it actually died in the cold, or for maybe a bunch of other reasons, who knows. But in theory, larch should be extremely cold tolerant, but I lost one during a freeze. Late frost, its foliage was damaged. This one had foliage out during a late frost as well, but it wasn't damaged. So Japanese larch, if you're brave, could be a fourth species of deciduous conifer to try in the south. There's one other one, and it is the golden larch, which is Pseudolarix amabilis. I did have one of those for 2 or 3 years, and during that time, its growth did not even reach 1 inch vertical growth. So it was crazy slow growing, and the golden larch is known for being slow growing, but that was just ridiculous, so I got rid of that. I would have taken 100 years for it to reach 10 feet, and I wanted more rapid results. So this regular Japanese larch has been doing well, probably averaging about maybe a foot of vertical growth each growing season. So if you want to have larch, Japanese larch seems about like just the best one you could get, and these are available online. And here's a little bit of bonus content. I wanted to show you my black spruce, Picea mariana. I'm pretty sure this was grafted onto Norway spruce rootstock, but I wish it did have regular black spruce rootstock just to see how well it would do in the heat and humidity. But this is the Ario variegata cultivar, which is supposed to have yellow frosted tips. You can see a little bit there, but they haven't really developed on this year's foliage yet, and they may not, which is just fine with me because I just wanted to have the regular black spruce foliage, which you can see is a little bit blue. And I think, I'm trying to remember where I got this. I may have gotten this one on singingtreegardens.com or Singing Tree Gardens online nursery. What a great specimen, though. It's actually pretty hard to find a good tree-sized black spruce. Conifer Kingdom has several cultivars of black spruce, but they're all dwarf. And this one is just a standard tree size, and you can see it's probably put on 9 to 10 inches of vertical growth this year, and leaning a little bit. I've got it wired right here, and I'll obviously keep it straight as it gets older. But so far, so good with the black spruce. And it's well outside of its native range. This is typically a very northern spruce, so somewhat experimental. Let's see what happens.